Welcome, everyone. And as always, I have to flip everything around. But good morning. Good morning. This show starting off great. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the back-to-back episode of War Stories. We are finally back on our normal day and time as of tonight. Tonight, we have a really cool film that I was not aware existed. I know of the historical event, but thankfully, Tony made me aware of the film that we're reviewing tonight, 6 Days, with Jamie Bell from 2017. And it is a retelling of the events of April to early May 1980 in London of the Iranian Embassy Siege. Really, really well done film. Lot to say about it. But first, I want to say hi to my friends and co-hosts. First, we will start with visible people first. So, so MasterSun42, how you doing, sir?
I am good. I am, like you, curious to what our colleague is wearing today, because it is going to be good, I'm sure, and obnoxious, probably.
Well, speaking of obnoxious, I'm offended by your tofu chop t-shirt. Because everyone's offended by everything these days.
Everybody likes Fujiwara Tofu Shop. Hopefully you guys know the reference. That'll be the quiz. Let's see who's the first one in chat to know what this is referring to.
Okay. I'm putting my money on Jason Anderson. And we also have with us our good friend and SAS veteran, Tony Roberts, Analog Toys. How are you, sir?
Did someone say SAS?
Yep, there it is.
Just got to fly the flag, you know. This is
It's okay. It's good. It's calmer than what I predicted.
Great and proud moment in British history. I'm not going to wear this all night because it's sweaty. It's very, very hot here, but I'm doing great. I'm really glad I suggested this film to you guys, especially since you hadn't heard of it.
Yeah.
MasterSun did get it completely confused.
Wrong, and I apologize publicly that I thought it was a different movie. My bad. Everybody record it. First time and probably last time ever. I'm apologizing to Tony.
Making a habit of this. You were sending $50 apologies to Melinda last week.
Oh my God. Yeah, I can't afford to be. Hi, Melinda. How are you today? I hope everything is well. I can't afford that this week.
I think Melinda might actually be watching her show tonight. So
okay.
But she will see the replay, I'm sure. Okay. I am curious, by the way, now that we've had this tradition, I would call it, with Tony and Bravo 20, and now this film with his display of amazingness. I keep wondering, Tony, what's going to happen with the next U.S. Air Force film that comes around.
So I've been thinking about that, and I need to start losing weight so I can get back in that flight suit.
Maybe you can get one of those T-shirts that just has a flight suit printed on it. Just, like
I'll wear it behind me or something.
Oh yeah, like those Ghostbuster shirts that look like the jumpsuit, but they.
Yeah. Oh yeah. If I just leave it like unzipped to right about here, I could probably. That's about 30 pounds ago.
If I'm completely honest with you guys, one of the reasons my camera is zoomed in a little bit closer than normal is because this shirt doesn't quite fit me anymore. From about here down, it's very, very thin.
He's wearing a belly shirt.
So it's then I got a Tweedledee thing going on there.
It shows all the wrinkles and all the curves.
Gotcha. All right. Well, you know what? I don't feel like this is my place to kick us off on this film. I really feel like, Tony, you should kick us off with 6 days and start us off by, let me just put it this way. Start us off by your awareness growing up of the incident, and also then when you discovered this movie.
Mm-hmm. So 6 days. So a real quick synopsis of the film is: in April 1980, 6 terrorists stormed the Iranian embassy, which is in a very, very upper class neighborhood in central London. I've been to walk around the grounds of Prince's Gate. They stormed the Iranian embassy, taking multiple hostages. Like, I don't remember exactly the numbers, 30, 40 people were taken hostage. There was a BBC guy in the building who was trying to get a visa to travel to Iran. There was a British police officer on duty there. He became a hostage. And over the next 5-6 days, these terrorists were trying to negotiate for the release of prisoners in Iran, and it failed. And eventually, control of the incident was taken away from the police. It was given to the SAS under the orders of Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, who then gave the order for the SAS to storm the building and resolve the situation. So, eliminate or capture the terrorists and free the hostages. This is very, very famous because prior to this point, not all that many people knew about the SAS. I watched an interview yesterday with one of the actual SAS guys who said he'd been in the parachute regiment for about 5 years in the army before he'd even heard of the SAS, and then eventually went off to join the SAS and was part of the Iranian Embassy Siege. The main reason this was very, very famous is because of it was broadcast live on British News. The raid happened around 6 or 7 p.m. in the evening. It was still light outside at that time of year in the UK. And these images of these black-clad men wearing gas masks, jumping over balconies, setting charges, blowing windows, storming the building. It was insane, and it was a very, very successful operation. Now, I was 3 years old at the time. I don't remember seeing this. I remember a lot more seeing footage of the Falklands War on TV. I was too young to kind of remember this, but some of my earliest memories, I mean, this obviously spawned the Action Man SAS toy line. I think the only toy line in history to be inspired by a terrorist incident. But it's one of those things that, because of when it happened in the timeline of my life, my earliest memories is like it's something I've always known about, and it was talked about for years and years and years in the United Kingdom. There is another film called Who Dares Wins, or it's called Who Dares Wins in the UK. I think it's called The Final Option in the United States, a Lewis Collins film, which it's not a factual recreation, but they basically take the blueprint of an embassy siege where the SAS storm a fictional embassy. That's not a bad, but that's like an action flick. It's not it's a guilty pleasure of mine, that film. So I've known about that for a long time. When I first came across 6 days is prior to the film coming out in 2017, in the months leading up to it. I had a number of people, given my background, when they saw the trailer on YouTube, they were like, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And I'm like, "It seems interesting. I'm looking forward to watching the film." And as soon as it came out and it was available, I obtained a copy, watched the film. It's not perfect, but I do think it's a very, very well made film. It is. There are a lot of inaccuracies, but at the same time, they did put a lot of effort into making a fair bit of stuff quite accurate. And yeah, I feel like I've talked enough now. What were your guys' initial thoughts?
So I kind of remember this only because my dad was military, and I remember incidents, and I remember seeing parts. And I remember when I'm watching this, I remember seeing flashes of the guys in black against the window. Where they were parasailing,
absolutely,
rappelling, abseiling.
They weren't parasailing.
We were messing with them. So I remember that part, but I don't remember anything else. I didn't understand the significance of it. I'm also a little amazed that Tony's actually younger than me. That's completely crazy. So I didn't really know that much about it. But then when later, as I got older, I had heard because that was the first time that I'd ever heard the word SAS. And then I remember seeing something shortly, and the only thing I remember is they were talking about who were the most, feared special forces, and they had said SAS, SEALs, and Spetsnaz. And I was like, what is SAS and what is Spetsnaz? As a young kid, and this is all pre-internet, so it ain't like I could look it up. So it wasn't until, I hadn't heard of this movie. I didn't even know they made it one about the siege. I figured they would have, but once I watched it and started watching it, it went straight to the action, and it was good. I'm sitting there going, and I'm the person who's like, I'm all about accuracy. How close to the real deal is it? So I start doing research. So I have my research stuff up, looking at different things, watching the movie, and just like Tony said, there were inaccuracies, but there were like key events and key things that happened, and they put them in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they had to, I would say Hollywood it up, but I don't know what the British equivalent of Hollywood is. But they did that stuff just to keep it more interesting and put some controversy. And I really thought the aspect of the police and the SAS, the reporters, what the government doing, the hostages and the terrorists, it was like you could make a whole bunch of different movies just based off of those separate events and how each weren't really working together, but it seemed to kind of work out in a way. Mm-hmm. So it was a real good movie. It was definitely something worth for you to pick up and take a watch.
Yeah. I was just thrilled when I saw the way they were structuring the film. And I have, as always with every War Stories guide, I'm going to get to the clips here in a minute. But I was really happy, even though I know that there are some inaccuracies in this film, as there are in any adaptation. I liked the fact that this movie overall did not try to pull some kind of Pearl Harbor or Titanic. Like, in other words, they didn't say, well, we need to get a love story in this, or we need to get it's like, no, this incident is compelling enough that we're going to focus on the incident. We're going to focus on the events. Like, we're going to compress time in some places. Maybe there's some lines that imply more tension in certain aspects than there otherwise was. But by and large, there's not, it's not like somebody outside the building personally knew somebody inside the building and there was all this kind of phone booth thing going on or anything like that, which was really cool. All right, so it's a quiet morning and on the last day of April. And here is your first round of clips for this War Stories to get us started.
Get down where you are! Everyone out! Out! Hurry, get down! I said out! Don't be stupid, you'll get us all killed.
Definitely the Iranian Embassy. Weren't Christensen getting visas for Iran today?
And I was really impressed right there in the beginning how one, like MasterSun said, they jumped right into it. They didn't have this big bloated preamble or anything. It was like, well, the drama starts when the whole incident started, so we're just going to start from right there. And then I loved the fact that you have. And I don't know if this is real. I can't wait to find out from you guys because I know you guys do your homework. The police officer inside, I assume it was real that he did have a weapon.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And obviously it was real that he chose not to use it the entire time for the purpose of the what. We would have heard about that. So that was all accurately staged is what we're saying.
Yeah. Okay. He even refused to eat because he didn't want to go to the bathroom and be escorted and worried about them discovering it. So he didn't eat as much as everybody else.
Wow. Okay. Dang.
Well, you've done more research than me. I didn't know that.
What I do.
At the time, last time I went to the UK was about 5.5 years ago. I took the family there for the first time, and normally I would always spend a lot of time in London. Like I used to be based out of Regent's Park Barracks, and I have a lot of friends in London. But you know, I would frequent pubs and bars and things like that. Because I was taking my family there, we were doing all the sightseeing stuff. So we're going, you know, Trafalgar Square and Buckingham Palace and all that. And I was shocked 5 years ago to see how many police on the streets of London are now armed. You know, and not armed with pistols. Like you go around Trafalgar Square and they're in body armor with MP5s and G36s and stuff.
Oh wow!
But back in 1980, the British police force was known for not being armed with anything more than a truncheon.
Right.
But when you were on duties for things like guarding an embassy in London, you were armed, and it wasn't a very commonly known thing. So the terrorists assumed, hey, British coppers aren't armed. So yeah, that was true.
And that's what the terrorists, their impression was that cops weren't armed back then. So that's why they did a very poor job of frisking him, because they just assumed he wasn't armed. So that was kind of good. I think it was like a 38. I mean, in our minds, a 38, we're like, really? Are you going to use that? But you know, think back then with, you know, where there were no guns just about in England at the time. That's huge.
Yeah, and of course we can also reference the John Woo film Hard Boiled, where the whole crux of the villain's philosophy is a 38 is nothing.
Did you do that? Did you get a little birdie about that?
I did. Chow Yun Fat kills him with a 38 in the end. Anyway, yeah. So the negotiations immediately begin. The reporter that you saw, who's playing the real reporter who covered the scene, she's there with her cameraman, ostensibly to pick up their colleague who was there to get a visa to Iran. Which character is he in the film? Do we know? I couldn't.
Yeah. His name was something Sims. So it right after that siege, there's a very brief moment where PC Trevor Locke is about to pull his revolver, and the guy behind him with the kind of longer hair and the glasses says to him, "Don't do that." He's quite because when this was televised, obviously all that was televised was what happened at the front of the building.
Right.
That's why the SAS took all the hostages out of the back. There was a lot more SAS troopers went into the building from the back. But what the scenes that were shown, you see John McAleese, one of the SAS guys. He's the guy who jumps across the balconies, lays the charge at the front. There's footage of when PC Trevor Locke sticks his head out the window and waves his police hat. And there's another one of the BBC guy. I think they usher him out of one window because the room's on fire and make him jump across to the other balcony. That was the BBC guy,
right?
Which they show that bit in this film.
Oh,
and I wasn't even sure some of those bits whether it was the TV footage,
or the real footage.
They interspliced a lot of that stuff.
Sorry, Master.
I would say there was two of the BBC guys. There was like a sound engineer guy and I got it written down somewhere. A sound recorder and a sound engineer. One guy was Simon Harris, the other guy was Chris Kramer. So
So that was the guy I speculated had to be the BBC guy, was helmet hair with the glasses.
Yes.
So I'm glad that I had him pegged right. Immediately she sees the guys running in there. The cops who are already out there on the scene are like, you can't come any closer. She goes running off, finds a payphone, calls the BBC HQ, BBC Center, and she's like, you're not going to believe what just happened. Like, the Iranian embassy has been taken hostage. And so immediately they're setting up all of their systems. The Metropolitan Police are trying to get this under control. And here's a few bits from that.
John, what's the deal, mate? I'm telling me some f***ing exercise.
Terrorists in London.
Multiple hostages?
Huh?
Hey, we're finally on.
What is it?
Unless these demands are met, they will kill a hostage at noon tomorrow.
So immediately, even as the Metropolitan Police are already negotiating with them, you have the SAS, the British military have already basically activated the SAS to prep for the possibility of having to take action, which from what this movie has indicated is an exponentially big deal, given that this is something that's going to take place on British soil. Like, this is not normal procedure, and there are, by every implication in the film, there are a lot of optics questions that are going on about, is this what Margaret Thatcher wants to do? Is this what's good for the British people? Is this what's good for our international image? All this kind of stuff. And it's all done very quickly and very, very subtly. It's not like they linger on some of it at sort of the parliament level or the administrative level, but it's all very compelling. I found all the sequences very, very interesting.
And that is a big deal to have. Like, you can't have the United States military on U.S. soil doing any kind of activity. There's like a Title 10 issue. That's why they use the Guard. You always hear about the Guard doing stuff, because the Guard is owned by the governor of the state. So that person can deploy them wherever. But for a military combat unit to do stuff inside of the any kind of operation, that's a big no-no.
Right. Although somehow we finagled it where National Guard could get sent outside the country.
Yes. Reserves and Guard can be activated.
Right. Sorry.
Now they're regular troops, but
yeah.
Or they can be sent out into the woods to hunt down John Rambo. But yeah.
Right.
I think it's important to give a very kind of brief look at the political situation when it comes to terrorism at that time in 1980. So the world had witnessed the Munich massacre, where the Israeli Olympians were captured by terrorists, and then in a failed attempt to raid the bus, nearly everyone got killed. That was 1972 or 73, something like that, about 8 years earlier. And then I think the year prior to this, or maybe only a few months prior to this, there was a failed attempt by the Americans to rescue hostages was that in Iran as well?
Iran.
Yeah. Stemming from the Munich incident, a lot of what's the right word I'm looking for? Western nations were very concerned about the threat of terrorism. And the British SAS, the Special Forces, were then tasked with forming, I think they called it the Pagoda Group or the Pagoda Troop, which is what eventually became what they call, and they still call it this today, the Counter-Revolutionary Warfare Wing. It's not anti-terrorism. So they started training for scenarios exactly like this, storming planes that had hostages on them, storming buses, storming buildings, hostage rescue, all of this type of thing. And it still works like this today. There are 4 squadrons of regular SAS soldiers, and they all spend 6 months out of every 2 years. A squadron gets put on the Counter-Revolutionary Warfare Wing. And back in those days, those guys were on call 24/7 for 6 months. They had a pager system, and it was like, right, when something happens, activate them, and they stand to. So these guys, this is very, very realistic. When it wasn't shown in the clip there, but just prior to when you see the SAS, they are going through what they call the killing house, where they are practicing their drills of clearing buildings, rescuing hostages, and then they get the call. These guys would already be geared up. They throw everything into a few blacked out vans and drive straight to London, and then they very quickly draw up what they call an immediate action plan, which is, if things go tits up in the next couple of hours, and that was just going to be a full blown, we're just going to sledgehammer the doors down and charge in. And then as they start to gather intelligence over the coming days, they further refine their plan going forward. So that's how that's how the SAS had the benefit of basically prepping for this for 8 years. And a number of the guys who were on what was eventually known as Operation Nimrod, which is the Iranian Embassy assault, a number of those guys who had been in the SAS for a few years, this was not even their first rotation on the counter-revolutionary warfare wing. They might have done 1 or 2 rotations already. So 6 months of intense training for this kind of operation.
Wow. So for once in the history of an event like this, people were literally prepared. They weren't completely caught off guard. Yeah, that's amazing. I pulled in this little bit right here, which I replayed it like 3 times because I just thought it was so cool. I have to believe this is accurate to how they did this, but I love this little moment right here.
Standard army field phone. No listening devices, so nothing to find. But we hang up here, it's off. They hang up, it stays open, never switches off, which means that we can hear anything they say within range.
It's very clever.
I love that. I love that. It's like we're doing this thing that's not going to endanger the hostages at all, but it gives us nearly a complete open line of communication to hear what they're doing and everything like that. Obviously, as we see throughout the film, as they occupy the houses on either side, they are able to probe the walls. And I have some footage of this later, but they're putting stethoscopes up against the walls. They're trying to figure out and start getting intel on where the hostages are versus where the terrorists are, how many terrorists there are, what are they armed with, what are the layouts of the rooms, the stairways, the hallways, the cupboards, everything like that. They're trying to map all this out. They're even reaching out to other embassy employees who might not have been working that day to try and get them to describe the interior and everything like that. Really, really cool.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very large building. It had a basement and then another, I think, 4 floors.
Yeah.
It's a big building. In a what we call in the UK in a terraced row. So a terrace row. Not a terrorist, a terrace.
I was like, well, I guess you named it after this. Okay.
Which is where you have a row of buildings where literally the wall of one is connected to the wall of the next building. And this was in the row. So this was number 16 Prince's Gate. I think the SAS were inside number 17. A few doors away, the police set up in a nursery school. About 4 or 5 doors away.
Yeah, amazing. And then they begin planning the potential assault because the terrorists have said, if you don't give in to our demands by noon or something like that, we're gonna kill somebody, one of the hostages. So they have to begin planning.
Well, I have spoken to the Prime Minister, and she is firm. The rule of British law must be applied here. On that, she will not be swayed.
We can't give them what they want, I'll tell you that much. The Iranian government are point-blank refusing to play ball. They're not releasing anyone from jail.
Well, are your men ready to go in, Colonel, if need be?
An immediate assault plan has been drawn up, based on what little intelligence we have. If it comes to it, it won't be pretty.
I freely confess that every time it cut back to that room with the table and all the guys around it, those were some of my favorite scenes in the whole film. I loved, don't get me wrong, the whole film is great, and I love the action and I love the way everything was staged. But there was something very compelling about the discussions they were having, because you had the head of the Metropolitan Police, you had the colonel that was in charge of the SAS guys, who, you know, and you had the guy who was directly in communication with Margaret Thatcher. And so there was this whole dynamic going on where they were constantly kind of like, it was give and take, and oh, we can do that, but we can't do this. And I don't know, I'm at a loss for words, but maybe it was the caliber of the actors that are in that scene. But every time it cut to that table, I was kind of like, ooh, here we go. You know, like
just the delivery of that last line that you showed in that clip where you've got the SAS colonel, and it's like, you know, we've drawn up an immediate assault plan, you know, but if we go in, it won't be pretty. And it's just the way it's delivered with that British accent, and even like the costuming. You to me, I look at that and go, that's an SAS colonel, because he's there, like, you know, him with all these Parliament guys, and he's in a suit and tie. But if you notice, he feels like very uncomfortable in it. It's really, it's stuffy right up to here. And I think one thing that I really would have enjoyed being added to this film was if they could have got a really good actress to actually play Thatcher, because all we hear is news sound bites, and that is like actually. But I understand how challenging that would be, you know, whether Meryl Streep wants to play Thatcher again or not. I don't know.
Well, they could have gotten Gillian Anderson.
Yeah,
Thatcher in The Crown. She was pretty good. She was really good. So
for the record, I want this to be known: those people at that table were taking orders from Cobra, because the name of their committee was like their crisis. Let me see the name. It's like Crisis on British Government Emergency Committee, and they called it Cobra. And that's who, with Margaret Thatcher, all these advisors and civil servants were giving them direction as well. So the terrorist organization of Cobra may have gotten their idea from this.
I don't think the term Cobra was very well known back then, but
we could learn something from these Iranian pesto. What a fool! Okay, so at this point, the SAS are getting in position, even though they don't have the go-ahead. Officially, the Metropolitan Police are in charge, and they are trying to talk these guys down. They're trying to, you know, buy time, and the demands are pretty crazy. I think I have the demands in this next clip, so I won't overtalk it, but I'll play it and then we'll discuss.
1 hour till deadline, boys. Maggie's made it clear anybody gets killed, she's sending us in.
He demands the release of his comrades in Arabistan. Your government must, or they will take action.
What did the Iranians say to them?
They welcome all the hostages to be martyrs for the great Islamic State of Iran.
Stand to.
15 minutes till deadline. Stand to.
We're on, boys.
The army's next door, champing at the bit to get in. I think the boss said it's the SAS.
You serious?
There's a lot going on here, so there's a lot to kind of unpack. I hate to overuse that word, but you've got the deadline coming up for them shooting a hostage, because what they want is they want their Iraqi comrades freed from some Iranian prison. And of course, the British can't make Iran do anything. Like this is a ridiculous. That's what one of the things I really loved about the film was it shows the true futility of taking hostages and then making demands to achieve a result. Like if you hold yourself, let's pretend there aren't even hostages. I read this really cool statistic. I can't quote it, but I remember reading it a few months ago, talking about the number of times in the medieval world where the person being besieged was successful against the attacker, and it's a very low percentage. Like eventually the fortress will fall. So now imagine that, like in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, so you got these guys who aren't very experienced. Some of them have military training. They're Iraqi soldiers, maybe. Some of them are just zealots, and they're in the middle of a major metropolitan city in a foreign country. They're in a little embassy that's surrounded by other buildings, and they've also taken hostages, and they're making demands that would require the sovereign decisions of another nation that is hostile to England. This was a very poorly thought out plan. Like I read a little bit about it, and they were saying that it was the Iraqis trying to, cause trouble and make Iran look a certain way or whatever. But it really, I don't know.
I'm trying to remember, because I was reading this. I'm trying to remember my politics.
Mm-hmm.
the Shah of Iran, I think, was semi-friendly, right? He was still. It wasn't until the Shah was ousted in the 80s, early 80s. So previous to this, everything was, we were friendly with them. So I think we gave them F-14s. There was a whole big deal. And there was like a section of Iran which they were referring to. This is where they grew up and it was being taken over. And Iraqis were like, yeah, we'll help you cause trouble. And even they said the weapons they thought were smuggled in an Iraqi diplomatic bag. And so that's kind of how they got it. So that politic thing is, and like you said, it's right. It's like, you're taking my people hostage, but you want me to ask another country to release prisoners from, and it was just like, there's no way that's going to happen. But I mean, they had ideas, but
yeah, I mean, I know that a lot of the people that work at an embassy are expats from their own country, like that. So there was a mix of legitimate Iranians in there, but again, they were under the, whatever you want to call it, the civil code of Great Britain. So the Metropolitan Police and then the British military are going to handle a situation like this. It's not like these Iraqi terrorists get diplomatic immunity for what they're doing. I found that really fascinating because when Mark Strong's character of the Metropolitan Police commander is trying to negotiate with his name Salim on the phone, there's this naivete, I guess. It's kind of like, he's like, we'll kill them if you don't. And he's like, you hear him saying, like, do you understand that we don't get along with Iran? They're not going to listen to us. And they're not going to release prisoners because you're doing this over here. Like, they're not going to do that. And in the background, as anybody listening might have heard from the table discussion that they were having at Parliament, they're already saying at various points in this film, we contacted Iran. They're not going to help us. Yeah. Like, they're like, whatever. We contacted, what was the other group they contacted? The Arab League. And they were like, we were going to help you, but we've backed off that. Like, we thought about it.
I read it like Jordan flat out said, no, like, quick. Everybody else said, I need to go talk to my people. And then they all came back and were like, no. So.
So in relation to that clip you just showed, I've got something completely different that I would like to point out. Part of that clip you showed, so this is the first deadline that the terrorists have laid down. We're going to kill someone at 12 noon, and it gets very, very tense. It's in the moments leading up to it, the word comes down from Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher: if they kill someone, the SAS are being sent in. And then it cuts to what is understandably a very, very cinematic shot. All the guys start loading their weapons and putting the flashbangs and smoke grenades into their, and I think Jason Anderson said it earlier on, the MP5 slap, cocking the weapons. Yeah. In reality, all of that would be ready to go. They wouldn't have all that gear laid out on tables. Like, it looks really, really cinematic and it ratchets up it's the classic kid up scene. I mean, no one's ever done it better than Schwarzenegger in Commando, but it's that kidding up scene.
And the main two actors didn't have their gas mask on, so the film can see those two guys, but everybody else was gas masked up because extras.
Yep. So there, the Mark Strong character is like
Merlin.
What's that?
He's forever Merlin.
That's right.
Every time I see him, I'm thinking, oh, it's Merlin.
Yep. He's like, I need more time. You got to give me more time. And he's trying to build trust with the guy, and he's being marginally successful. Like, the guy agrees to more time, but there is this initial tension as they come up to the deadline, because he doesn't succeed in getting him to concede that extra time. He's like, maybe you can release a hostage to show good faith, and all this kind of stuff. And in the background, well, literally next door, on the other end of the row, the SAS are getting ready because they've been told the moment we hear that a hostage has been shot, we are going in. Like that's it. So it's getting closer and closer to the deadline. And then this happens.
If you don't help, we will kill them.
No. If you do that, then I won't be able to help you. Do you understand?
In 5 minutes, we kill unless you follow our demands.
We can't release prisoners in Iran. That's simply beyond our power. The Iranians have washed their hands of us. I want this to be resolved peacefully, without violence.
Every day in my land, it is violence on my people.
Christ, what's going on in there?
Go! You mustn't go in there. You've no idea what's waiting for you.
I mean, it's such it. I hate sitting here saying that a real event like this is like edge of your seat entertainment, but it's like it really is compelling. It's like, what is about to happen? And they hear this bang. I never did figure out what the bang was, but the guy that gets thrown out of the embassy, who is a hostage, they think he's been shot. And come to find out, no, Salim just kind of acquiesced to that initial demand. And they threw out a guy who's having serious GI issues. Like he's having, bad stomach or whatever.
He upped it a little bit worse than what it actually was, but he did have a GI issue.
Yeah, because he called it gut rot, which I didn't even know what that is. But,
I'm pretty sure Tony has drunk some of that.
You get gut rot from eating too much cheesecake, Clemens. But for those in the chat who don't know, when I joined the green room earlier, I got to just watch a full screen of Clemens just smashing cheesecake.
I just got home from work and I was hungry.
In his tofu t-shirt.
It was tofu.
Was it a tofu cheesecake?
It was tofu cheesecake. It's good for you.
They're told, you have you have 48 hours or whatever, like you've requested or whatever. We're going to give you your 48 hours, but if you don't show progress on this, and then we're going to start killing people. We're going to kill a hostage and then another hostage every 30 minutes. And this is what they keep coming back to, and this is what Mark Strong's character keeps gently trying to push them back on. Is this, can I just get a few more hours out of them, or one more day, or whatever? Because in the background, as we've already established, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of people who they're not dysfunctionally disagreeing. They're all working toward the same goal, but it's hard to explain. This is not a dysfunctional situation. This was an operation that was carried off very successfully. That doesn't mean that there aren't disagreements, but the disagreements were not handled in an unprofessional or irresponsible or toxic manner. It was very above board with everything. And I don't know if that's the way it really went in history, but that's the way the movie.
Yeah, I'm not certain of that either. But although this ended up being a very successful operation, I'm sure there would have been a lot of reservations from a lot of people, like Chief Superintendent Max Vernon, given Munich and what happened with the American hostages. Like, this could all go horribly, horribly wrong, and we don't want this to happen on the streets of London.
Yeah. Right.
So it's not. It does a little bit kind of come across in the film as though they're like they sort of dread the SAS. I don't think that was the case at the time. I think it was a lot more a case of, this is a massive gamble, and
the body count. I think that's what they're worried about.
Everyone was very, very concerned.
The government is worried about the number of bodies that are going to be shown dead on live TV. You have the police who are like, it's my jurisdiction, it's my rodeo, I want to do it, I want to control. We have, hostage negotiate, whatever. But then you have the SAS dudes who want to go, because that's all they've been trained to do, is to do that. So you have all these kind of conflicting interests in this event. And you saw, like, he cuts them off when he says, you're not going. I could, there was a scene, I think you have it, but he was like mad. I think they did over the top. He was like mad, so mad he started punching himself because he wanted to go. He was like hyped up because, that's all you do. So that is like I said, you could do almost 3 separate views. You could do a whole movie of one of those views,
Mm-hmm.
and then come back and do it again with another view and see how they kind of interact. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's and the tension there when you see these guys, they've gotten mentally ready to do this. They're geared up, literally and psychologically. Their adrenaline's going, and they're hanging out in that hallway, ready for that go go go, command, because they're waiting for that hostage to get shot. They assume that's what's going to happen, and then they hear that noise, but they don't get the command, and then they're told, no, stand down. We're going to stand down. Even as a viewer, I was like, oh God, this must be infuriating. Like, I've heard about it with the Spitfire pilots where, during the Battle of Britain, they would be on alert and they'd be sitting there ready to scramble. And then they'd hear that phone ring and they'd be like, and then somebody would say, oh, no, it's, we're standing down for now.
That's standard military operation. That stuff happens so much that you would not believe. You are ready to go. They said it's going to happen, and then you get delayed, or something else happens, and it happens all the time. And you're pumped up to do something, and then nothing. It happens all the time. It happens to this day. It's just the nature of the beast of what it is.
It's the most famous one are the delays before D-Day.
Yeah,
we had hundreds of thousands of people amped up and ready to go, and then the weather kept holding them up. And then finally, if you watch the rather excellent dramatization of it starring Tom Selleck called Ike, if you watch that one, there's this beautiful moment where he's sitting there after like the third delay, and Monty just leans in from the main table and he goes, "I say go, go," and it's this great moment. So here's the next 48 hours, and new plans are being drafted up for this hostage situation.
Stand down. Say again. Stand down.
Post-World War II Soviet anti-personal fragmentation grenade, also known as the RGD-5.
Very destructive in confined spaces.
And they claim to have a doomsday device.
So, 30 plus rooms over 6 floors, rigged with explosives.
We know there are some hostages on the second floor. The intel's never going to be perfect.
We make our approach from the roof. We make entry, we dominate the area where the hostages are being held, and then we fight our way down from there.
I was really, I know this is how the amount of prep goes into it almost overnight when horrible situations like this occur. But it's still impressive to see, how quickly they have mock-ups of every level of the building in 3D, and how quickly they have all the intel they need on who the terrorists might be, what their backgrounds are, what their potential armament is, what they need to be ready for. It always impresses me when I see that or read about that kind of gathering of information so rapidly.
And in reality, it was actually far more impressive than what you see on there. So I believe it was at Regent's Park Barracks, which is in another part of London, which is a British facility in the middle of London. They actually made full-scale mock-ups of the different floors where they would make like wooden frames and just staple it with rolls of Hessian, like Hessian sandbags, so that they could practice going through, right, the door's there, that's there, full scale, so the guys could actually walk through the different floors.
And they made that by like day 2, they had all that. And I'm like, that's amazing. Those dudes constructed all that in like a day from blueprints.
Yep. Yeah, really incredible. They think at this point that for whatever reason, they seem to believe that the SAS guys are being told that the military is pushing for the Metropolitan Police to provide the buses that they're demanding, because the terrorists want these buses so they can go to Heathrow, so they can get out of the country. First, they want it verified that their comrades have been freed. then they want an airplane from Heathrow to wherever they're going to go.
Yep.
And so the SAS guys are like they're being told this is going to be a rescue of the hostages from a coach. We're going to rescue them from a coach.
Yeah, they call it a coach option.
Yeah, the coach option. And this is what occurs as they are prepping for the coach rescue.
You're a dead man walking.
The army now appear to be directly adjacent to the Iranian embassy, although officials continue to deny their involvement.
It's ready and workable.
It didn't work for the Germans at Munich, and this government will not copy their failed plans.
The Special Projects team are elite soldiers. They've never been used on British soil. Certainly never assaulted a 6-story building filled with civilians and terrorists ready to blow themselves up if we attack.
Are you saying your men can't handle it?
I back them 100%. They know the risks. But be certain you do.
I don't know how to describe. It's not amused. I wasn't amused. It was more of a, dare I say, pride? I don't know. I don't know what I was feeling, but it was really complicated because when the minister says we are not going to execute on a failed plan from Germany during the Munich incident, we will not do that.
Yep.
And in that moment, I was kind of like, I mean, this guy's difficult, but I kind of like him.
Yeah. And that's a straight politic thing. That is real deal. If another government failed at doing something, and especially recent as this was, they are going to be real hesitant to do that because they're going to say, because if it goes bad, everyone's going to look at them and go, you didn't learn from what they did?
Right.
And another instance I forgot to mention, when they first took these hostages, they announced, if I'm not mistaken, they're not going to kill any of the British hostages. They specifically said they weren't killing the British hostages, which I found in 1980s, you saying that, I'm thinking if this was an American, you said that, I'd be like, ooh, I don't know if I think our team said, we'll just go get in there again. Let's see what happens. But also on a funny note, not really funny, but they did release a second set of hostages. They released 2. One was pregnant, so they let her go. The second, the actual hostages were given inputs. The hostages said, get this guy out of here. Reason? He snored really bad and loudly, and they wanted him out so they could get some sleep.
I do kind of like that.
I found that I was dying on reading. I'm like, really? Yeah.
This is ridiculous. We're letting you go. Why? You snore a lot.
Get the surgeon leave.
Yes. So they've nixed the bus maneuver, even though the colonel is like, this is our best option. If we can get them away from a populated area and then, corner them on this bus once they get to a, runway at Heathrow, that would be the best option. And, Margaret Thatcher's office is like, nope, we're not doing that. So negotiations have to continue further while they keep trying to buy time.
Silent.
Yes, sir.
Sorry. Also, you know how they were drilling in the walls and getting the sound equipment? Well, it was making noise. And he kept going, and they didn't do it as much. Like, what is that? What is that? And he kept, hearing about all that. Well, they wound up redirecting Heathrow Airport to fly their planes low over the building to disguise some of that noise.
Ah, interesting.
So they didn't talk about that in the movie. I thought that'd have been a real cool thing to do in the movie, but they did that like on day one.
Yeah.
When they were trying to establish all that sneaking and sounds and stuff.
They could have even done that with sound effects of planes flying over it in the building while they're negotiating and going, what's up with that? And the other guy says, we've got Heathrow flying lower. Yeah, that would be cool. Timothy Ward says, I'd be the first to go free.
He must snore bad.
Yeah, so the negotiations have to continue while the SAS comes up with another idea.
Salim.
There's an argument between Salim and this other one called Faisal. They have agreed they will kill our hostage unless their demands are met today.
That's not my point. It's about leadership.
Boss, this is the SAS. We're not philosophers. We're not warrior poets. Once we let these dogs off the leash, we know what they'll do. It won't be pretty.
And when it comes time, we need someone up front with the heart of a lion and the brains of a judge.
We can hear them in the walls and outside. Stop the noise, do you hear?
Are we doing that?
I want to speak to the BBC.
Thoughts?
Well, first of all, I need to address the whole piece about Jamie Bell's character, you know, where he's talking about, so Jamie Bell is playing a real life guy called Rusty Furman, who was a lance corporal at the time. I believe he was one of the team leaders. There was actually a lot more men who stormed that building than what they actually show here. 6 teams of 8. That's almost 50 men.
Right.
You never see that many SAS guys.
Right.
Rusty Furman was one of the SAS advisors on this film. I'm not saying that he influenced them in any way, but for purposes of dramatization, they focused in on kind of one character and they made him to be more important to the story than what he actually. Every single man was important to that operation, you know what I mean? But at no point did a lance corporal get put in charge of Operation Nimrod. It didn't happen. That was very much a dramatization and one of the more contentious parts of this film from the perspective of the men who were really there. I believe including Rusty Furman himself. So,
what about you, MasterSun? What were you thinking at this point in the film?
Well, you can tell it's getting intense. You can tell they're running through options. It's this typical police don't know what the SAS guys are doing, and vice versa, because there's not really good communication between the two or any of the organizations amongst each other. Everybody's kind of running their own independent thing. I think now we are way better coordinated nowadays than that. Part of it's because you have like liaison guys who work with them like almost daily. So when something like this happens, that person comes, you know, you're a familiar face and you can kind of coordinate some better than that. They did some at the end when they're talking about, you know, keeping them on the phone and stuff. But right now you can just tell that it is ramping up. They are running through their options. You know, the police job is to get hostages out.
Right.
SAS job is to kill terrorists.
Yep.
So it's kind of like you're working together, but you're actually working against each other in a way.
Yeah, because the police at first are kind of like, you know, earlier in the film you saw where he's like, "Are you serious? Their SAS are already here? Like what?" That's like we're trying to do our job to keep the hostages alive through negotiation. And the military is trying to keep the hostages alive through direct intervention. Like they're trying to get in there sooner rather than later, so that fewer people get killed by the terrorists. And I do love that moment, which is why I included it in this last clip, where the guy says to his commanding officer, he's like, "Look, I get that you're concerned about leadership and this and that, and who's in charge of which squad and whatever. If we go in," he goes, "but you got to remember something. We're there to clean house. We're there to, you know, we're there to get the job done. We are not diplomats, and we are not, you know,
warrior poets." I did have a good chuckle at that.
You did, yeah. We're here to get the job done and do it fiercely and do it, you know, without compassion. Like it's, you know, it's. And I just love that bit where he's like, you know, you need somebody. He said, you know, you need somebody with the skill of a lion or heart of a lion.
The heart of a lion and the brains of a judge.
The brains of a judge. That's what it is. Now, Tony had mentioned earlier the training mock-ups, the full-scale training mock-ups. I'm about to show you those, everybody, in the movie. One of the bits that I had to cut off that I didn't show you was when they were thinking about doing the siege of the building before they got distracted by the bus training, and they had the mock-up, and Rusty was saying, if we come in from the roof and we come in this way, there's a little bit of brotherly skepticism from everybody else, where they know it's brilliant, but they also know it's crazy. They're like, there you go again, making the crazy the crazy plan. But now with the bus option taken out of the running, they don't have much of a choice. And so they begin training again in the full mock-up, which is right here.
I'm trying to help you, Salim.
Good. Because this is your last chance.
What are they saying?
They are preparing to kill all the hostages.
Clear. Go. You two clear that room there. Where's Jerry? Jeremy, watch your stairs. X-rays may escape down. They'll be shooting, so watch your ass. You mean it's all wrong?
Here, it does not open this way.
What?
And this, the door is on the other side. Here, you will end up in a cupboard.
I love that they've got a guy who works at the embassy who's like, you do that.
Caretaker or something.
Yeah, he's like, you're going to end up in a cupboard if you're planning it this way. This door doesn't actually work this way. All that kind of stuff. And I was, like MasterSun was saying earlier, I was really blown away by the fact that they had those mock-ups done so fast. You have to, obviously, but the fact that we can pull all that together and make that happen is incredible. I also really like the fact that every team is given their own mock-up of their floor. So it's like these are the floors you're operating by. Here's your egress and everything to get to the said floor. This is what it's generally going to look like. And they get to work with their flashbangs and everything else. It's really impressive. Frivolous question, Tony. When you were in the SAS, obviously the technology and everything had advanced. Was there a little bit of disappointment that you never got to wear that kind of kit for any of your training?
Who says I didn't wear some of that kit for some of my training?
That's why I'm asking the question. Was a lot of that still in use when you were going through, or had they upgraded a lot?
So like the gas mask is a great example. I wore what we call an S10 respirator, which is different. You were able to put the filter canister on either side, depending on whether you were left or right hand predominant and that kind of thing. But it was still very much similar to that. Obviously, I don't want to give away too much. I mean,
sure.
Well, we're talking about a film, so if you haven't seen it, spoilers anyway. We should. Yeah, but there's a guy who badly burns his leg during the siege. They now wear flame retardant Nomex gear. A lot of similar equipment it's a lot more advanced now. Like I really like seeing you've got those big mag
lights on the flashlights,
huge, with like 4 or 5 D-sized batteries in them. Today we have these tiny little things that can illuminate a helicopter in the sky,
right?
Kind of thing. So
the mag light. When I noted that, I was like, I'm really glad they went to that level of authenticity with the film. Like having that massive mag light on there, on that mount, that was the most powerful flashlight back then. Like, that was the one, and it could double as a bludgeoning weapon, which is also, if you had it free, obviously. Now we come to the bit where they have run out of patience. Well, I should clarify for everybody. Mark Strong's Metropolitan Police character still has a relationship going with Salim, and he has brought him food that he's pushed through the window. for all of his men. He has staved off people getting executed. He's convinced them to give him another 48 hours, obviously. But now Salim has lost patience. They have even gone to the effort of making sure that all of the terrorists' demands were read out loud on the BBC World Service at 6 p.m. in full. They got that done for them too, just to keep the trust going while they're trying to figure out how to wear them down so that they can bring this to a peaceable conclusion. Unfortunately, there is a group of terrorists, and one of them's name is Faisal, and I had a note of that because that's actually Alec Guinness's character in Lawrence of Arabia as Prince Faisal, so it was easy for me to remember that name. Faisal is not as how do I put this? He's not as easy to persuade.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's the guy who actually had probably the most combat experience.
Mm-hmm.
He was second in command. You could tell he just wanted to kill everybody.
Yeah.
And that was more of his motivation. So
right.
I'm sure when they were getting the group of people together, you worry about a guy like that, but you also need a guy like that,
right?
Incidentally, to kind of do some of this. So,
unfortunately, like you just implied, a guy like that, though, if things carry on too long, he will screw it up for everybody, and that's exactly what happens here.
You go blind the amount you stare at those boards.
It's figuring out who not to shoot, mate. I know this guy. You back this guy into a corner, he's going to fight his way up. Nothing to lose.
What the hell's going on in there?
I've got a hostage downstairs, sir.
They've got him tied up down there. Unless they get what they want, they say they're going to kill him.
I really think they're going to do it, sir.
No more delay. You bring the bus here now. The guy takes you your home. So talk to them.
So he kills a hostage without consensus from the group and without Salim's buy-in. And of course, all those shots are heard by the BBC reporters outside, and everybody on either side can hear those gunshots. One thing I didn't quite highlight was there was a clip earlier, everybody, where at the very beginning of the clip, you saw a guy coming out on a gurney, and he said they're planning on killing all the hostages. That was the second hostage that Mark Strong's character convinces them to release.
That was the Snorer.
The Snorer, yes. So they have effectively released 2 hostages at this point.
Well, it was really 3 at that point, but they just didn't show because the pregnant lady and the other guy came out at the same time.
Right. I
think because he said, I can't remember, or that may have been later when they did the news thing. I could be getting it confused.
Right. So at this point, there's no question that now the Metropolitan Police are going to have this taken away from them, not because they've done anything wrong, but because Thatcher doesn't want any more people killed. She wants to send a message to the world as to how the UK handles terrorism.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
Oh, sorry, and obviously everyone heard the gunshots, but they still wanted to confirm, have they actually executed someone? And there's news footage that they carried the executed body out the front, and they rolled him down the steps.
Yeah.
Where there was a couple of people waiting to put him on a strip. Once that body came out,
and incidentally,
reached the point of no return.
Yeah. Incidentally, there was the 3 shots. Nothing really happened for a few hours, and then there were shots again, and then the body came out. So they weren't sure if it was the first set of this, or the third set, or second set who got him. But once they got the body and they examined it, they figured they could tell how long he had been dead. So they knew it was the first shot, but now they're worried about what were the other 3 shots. What was that for? And I don't think they ever explained what it was.
Yeah, a lot of strange noises coming out.
Yeah.
Bang noises coming out of this building over this 6 days. KBA says, I'm sorry, not KBA. Alan says he thinks the lights were Lightstream brand flashlights that were on the top of. Yeah. And then Keith Knight says, in reality, Salim had phoned police to rant at the lack of info on the news. Salim was a ruthless bastard. A hostage was murdered soon after. Yeah, and that may be one of the things Tony and MasterSun were alluding to at the beginning, where there are some character dynamics that are not exactly accurate to the original incident. Trying to, again, build some sort of character interaction through this narrative, this film. So I don't like saying the word narrative because I'm used to saying it in the traditional sense, and now narrative is a loaded word, and I don't mean it that way. I'm a screenwriter, so I mean it like that.
Do you know, my wife, funny little side story, of English is not her first language, but she does speak English really, really well. And every now and again, she'll turn around to me and she'll say, what does this word mean? Because she says, I've been married to her for 10 years. I know how to explain it in a way where she's going to understand it. And just yesterday, she's like, what does the word narrative mean? And I started going in like you, Michael, in the screenwriting sense.
Yeah.
And she's looking all confused. I'm like, well, in what context? And she'd been watching a Pamela Anderson interview where she was talking about the narrative in the media. I was like, oh, yeah, that kind of means something different.
Right. Yeah. They've co-opted the word, and now they've used it for something totally different. Yeah. It's the new buzzword. They used to say agenda. Now they say
Oh, that would be my family. The dog has peed.
No problem.
They don't even have to come in the room anymore.
So here we go. Military force, after that body comes out, everything is now changed. And Mark Strong is told, this is a military operation now, and what we need you to do is we need you to keep Salim talking and distracted and buy time so that every second you can buy us will be crucial. And he's like, so you want me to like lie to him? And they're like, we want you to save lives is what we want you to do. Like, so here's that bit.
The Prime Minister has authorized the military takeover.
Do we think this man was killed accidentally?
No, we do not.
Maggie's government's hanging by their tits, and it's Lance Corporal Rusty Furman who's got a hold of them.
The Prime Minister asks that there be no smokescreen to cover or block the assault from the television cameras. She wants the world and the British people to see how this government deals with terrorism.
I have control. I say again, I have control.
Keep Salim talking during the assault. If they haven't got their leader, it might help.
What are you saying, sir? You want me to help kill them?
Oh, no. I want you to save the hostages.
I mean, at that point, I really am on the edge of my seat going, how is this going to unfold for the rest of the story? You know, like I'm looking at this and I'm saying to myself while I'm watching it, okay, how many seconds can he really keep Salim on the phone once people start busting through the windows? You know, how many seconds? Now, I get it. I'm not skeptical of what the military is asking for. I understand that every second does count. But at the same time, I'm going, Salim is not going to be hanging to that phone. Unless Mark Strong is like the ultimate Jedi mind tricker, there's no way he's going to be able to keep that guy on the phone like that. So, yeah, what were you guys thinking at this point?
It's just all about crucial seconds, about understanding where they are in the building at the time. Obviously, once everything, as the expression in the SAS is, once it goes loud or goes noisy, at that point, I watched a really good breakdown the other day where there's a very well-known ex-SAS guy now, who he does the TV show SAS Who Dares Wins. They were getting him to break down some scenes, SAS scenes in Call of Duty. There's one where they're doing something similar where they're in the game, they're storming this building, and a woman screams, and yet they still try to be operate with stealth after that. It's like as soon as someone has screamed, it's gone noisy. It's like you wouldn't use your night vision, you just turn all the lights on and stuff like that. So but yeah, a very, very tense moment. There was a lot to orchestrate. As I said, there was 6 different teams entering the building from different locations. They're all trying to do it, all synchronized. So you see the SAS colonel is at the cabinet briefing room, Cobra. And then there is like a field commander who's a major who's in the building across the street. And he's the one who's going to give the command. It's going to be stand by, go, go, go. And then everyone springs into action and initiates their plans, and history was made.
Yeah. What do you think, MasterSun?
So same along the lines. It's you can tell we're at that point to where things are definitely about to happen. So and forgive the noise. I don't know what they're doing out there now. They're vacuuming or something because I'm not doing it.
It's really fine.
It's everything's about to go down. You see them, they're getting the permissions and all that stuff. And I don't know if you got the clip of them signing the document and stuff that I saw that was actually in a museum somewhere. You can go and see that.
If you pull up Keith's Knight comment there.
Let me pull it up. Oh, what did I do? Okay, hold on. Here we go. Sorry. Right here?
Yep.
A paper had to be signed by Barrow, the police officer in charge, handing over powers to the SAS officer. That form is on display at New Scotland Yard today.
I mean, that's kind of like you're putting that scrawl there just to basically saying, yes, I am turning over power to you for you to go in, and it's like, you're stepping back. And so once he does that, once the police does that, he has relinquished control, and they're in the back now. So
I like the fact that he covered his ass, though. I like the fact that he was like, look, I appreciate you verbally telling me, but I need it in writing, because the last thing I need after the fact is you guys saying, well, they just went and did their own thing and went rogue if it went bad, or something like that. They wanted some CYA, which I thought was smart.
And also in private, Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher had told the SAS men, take no prisoners. They were under no illusion. They weren't going in there to try and arrest people. That's not what they do.
Right.
There's people love to look at things like this in hindsight and pick holes in it, and could you shoot to wound and all of that. So it's like that was not the intent of the British government.
Right.
It was, how can I say, fuck around and find out.
Well, that's the whole thing. And I don't want to, I'm sure there's going to be people in the comments that might disagree with me, but after a prolonged 6-day siege in a sovereign nation of a sovereign embassy at the same time, with people being held hostage and being brutalized and one person being killed, and all of this for demands that can't be met and all kinds of stuff, do I really want to sit around and bother trying to be compassionate when I go in there to stop this thing from going on another day? Not really.
No.
No,
you have these SAS men, and it's almost like the fire alarm, but in this case it's break glass in the event of an execution, and they broke the glass, and here we go.
Yeah, exactly. And you were talking just a second ago about the whole stand by, go, go, go. And here we are.
Please assure me there is not an assault about to happen.
I can assure you 100% we are not about to attack. I have my instructions from the government. Those instructions are to keep the hostages alive.
There's nothing suspicious.
There is a suspicious sound.
There's nothing. Salim, talk to me.
No, wait, I will come back.
Salim, wait.
Go, go, go!
I want to ask you both, since you've both researched this, I freely admit, normally I would do a lot more research before this, but I knew both you guys were researching this. So I was kind of like, I'm just going to do the clips and everything and watch the film. The broken glass bit, did that actually happen that way?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so one of the guys abseiling down the back of the building gets tangled up. That's how he ends up getting burnt as well. So as his mucker comes over to sort of try and help him out and get free, they're kind of struggling with the rope, and they accidentally smash the glass. So it's like they end up having to go before everyone is completely in position. And I don't know how many clips you've got. It would obviously be very hard to show the whole assault here, but
I've got a number. I've got a number of them.
Okay,
but
so Rusty's team at the back, they're going to make entry through the back door with a charge, and they have to change the plan. Because if they let that charge off, they're going to kill the guy who's trapped by the rope. So the
explain that, Tony, because
goes up above the skylight.
I heard him kept saying, "We'll hit someone. We'll hit someone." I didn't understand what they were referring to, because I didn't think the charge would be that huge. But who they were going to hit with that charge?
So don't quote me on this, but as I understand it, is once the two guys abseiling down, once they reached the balcony, they were going to crouch down. The explosion was going to be the level below, and they were going to be protected by the balcony. But because they were up above it, if they were going to blow that back door off, potentially, the shrapnel of the splintered timber and all sorts of stuff was going to hit that guy. The plan was that they were going to get onto the balcony and be protected by the concrete balcony.
Okay. Yeah, I kept thinking, like, is there something on the other side of the wall where they were about hitting hostages or something? I didn't understand, but that makes sense. Okay.
I was in the same dilemma, MasterSun. I was in the same dilemma. I was like, wait, who's under threat of getting killed? Is there somebody behind the window? Like, I was like, wait, what?
And part of this, I found out that there was, like, what they didn't really address in the movie, the doors and the windows were reinforced and bulletproof in certain areas because of a prior attack from other places. So the SAS actually recommended years earlier, you need to updo your security. So it was actually a little bit harder for them to get in because there was a lot of these reinforcements in that building.
Technically, any gunshot is a wound. Some are just a little more woundy than others. And Alan says, I recall reading somewhere the guy getting strung up was due to them being short of abseil ropes and buying some extra in London, which was substandard and melted under friction. Really?
Yeah, I can neither confirm or deny. I don't know, but I certainly know Alan's a good friend of mine, and he's a very well-read man. So
I trust everything Alan's saying. It's just amazing to read that. It's like
yeah, me too. I was reading that in the comment just before you brought it up. I was like, wow, yeah, that. Because I read that and I'm like, well, I like that because it means that the SAS guy didn't fuck up.
Equipment. Yeah, because I was wondering, I was like, how did he get so irrevocably hung up? Like they were, but he does in real life, like in the actual incident, he's caught up there. And here are choice bits from the first part of the siege as it begins.
Bravo 1, where is the frame charge on the ground floor? If we blow it, we're gonna kill it.
Flashbang! Cut him down! Cut the run! Smashing it! Flashbang! I'm all right.
I got to ask you guys some questions about this. So, okay.
Adrenaline. That's the answer. Waiting on it.
That part I could kind of figure was adrenaline there at the end. I did not find that unrealistic at all. I was like, yeah, he's going, he's moving. He's got a bad surface burn, but he's going. Did somebody accidentally throw an incendiary grenade instead of a smoke grenade, or did the smoke grenade malfunction? Because I can't imagine they would want to set the building on fire.
Flashbang. So I'm gonna let Tony define what a flashbang actually is, but that's legit. That is straight legit.
So a flashbang at the bottom of a flashbang has, I don't know, there's about 8 small they're small they're non-lethal explosives. So when you pull the pin on a flashbang, you throw it in, it lets out smoke, and then it goes bang bang bang, bang, and they'll bounce around the floor and fly sparks out. So in some instances, something that's highly flammable like that, I mean, in reality, it is actually what happened. The flashbang set the curtain on fire. It was a kind of a risk they have to take, but it's a very disorientating weapon. Like if you've been, I've been on the receiving end, like where we've been in what they call the killing house, where we're doing this type of training, and sometimes you have to play the hostage or the terrorist, and you throw a flashbang into a room, and it doesn't matter how much experience you've got, it's still you're like this. It's disorientating for them, so they throw them in, so that the second later, when the flashbangs ended and the man, the SAS trooper enters the room, they'll be completely disorientated. They won't know where they're looking. They'll probably have their eyes closed. Yeah, it's a non-lethal weapon, but yes, it can cause things to catch fire.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, because when I replayed that moment a few times too, because they're chattering, they're telling each other what they're doing, they're calling out things. And my brain was tricking me saying, did one guy say smoke, or did he say smoke grenade? Because I just see the other guy grab the grenade. I'm like, they wouldn't have thrown the wrong grenade. Like it's not. So thank you.
They wouldn't have even been carrying
right.
Fragmentation grenades. It's not that they flashbang and smoke is what they had. Yeah,
that's me projecting my ineptitude with Call of Duty into this, where I end up throwing the wrong grenade
all the time.
And then I blow myself up, and it's a mess. We're not even gonna get into how I misuse the Hawk in Assassin's Creed and take my own ass out. Okay, so they're now in the midst of this final action, and there's a bit that I had a hard time bridging, so I've got to describe it to everybody. They start getting in their positions and figure out where they need to be, but the terrorists have barricaded a lot of the doors closed on various sides with equipment, furniture, all kinds of stuff. And one of the doors they can't get through. And so one of the guys says, I'll go back out the balcony, jump over, open the window, get around, and I'll clear the door for you on the other side. And they're like, great. So he goes running back. And the moment he comes outside, he's like coughing and he pulls his respirator off.
Yeah, it never happened.
I didn't think so. I was like, what?
Remember when I said I have questions, Tony? That was like one of my main. Well, like, if you have your gas mask on, you're going to be fine with the smoke. I don't understand.
There's a number of reasons that the SAS wore gas masks during that siege. The primary one was operational security, to hide their identities. But also, there's a potential for fire. They're going to be using flashbangs. They're going to be using smoke. If you're coughing, you're not going to take your gas mask off because you're actually protecting yourself.
Right.
What I believe happened here is it's okay. They're now storming the embassy. It's getting very, very confusing, and I think the director made a choice for the audience to go, you need to be able to understand who's who. So, as an example, Rusty Furman, we can pretty much tell who he is the whole time because he comes in from the ground, he moves to the stairwell, and he never leaves the stairwell. He kind of commands.
Right.
But he's not wearing gloves. That was a director's choice to make him stand out from the others. Every man was wearing gloves on that operation. You can identify the guy who burned his leg because they continually show the burnt leg. It's to give the audience a bit more orientation. So so that they understand, right, well, who's this one guy who's now gone around the other way?
Mm-hmm.
How do we, to avoid audience confusion, how do we know who this guy is? Takes the mask off.
Yep.
Interestingly, and I don't know how true this is, he sees one of the terrorists. He has a stoppage with his MP5. He transitions to his pistol.
Right.
He continues to use that pistol all the way, when in reality, he may have used it for a moment. What an SAS trooper would have done was then, as soon as he got the opportunity, he would have holstered the pistol, cleared his stoppage, and gone back to his MP5.
Yep.
Right.
And I'm thinking a much better way of doing this than having the guy remove his gas mask could have been having him transition to the pistol and just go, oh, well, he's the pistol guy now.
Yeah.
Right.
And they could have followed him that way. But yeah, I think there was some choices made by the production team and the director to try and make this a little bit more understandable for the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, at the lack of accuracy.
Yeah. It was like I said, it didn't pull me out of the momentum of the moment. It just made me kind of put a pin in that, where I'm kind of like, wait, why did he take his mask off? Like that was, and the jam.
Here's an interesting comment from Keith Knight.
Mm-hmm.
So wasn't there a report that one of the troopers threw up in his mask, emptied it, and put it back on, spluttering his way onward, but still masked? Yeah.
That makes me wonder if the screenwriters were like, well, we know this is true, but it does an audience lacking the knowledge. Will the audience even believe that's possible?
Yeah.
Like, because the most amazing parts of a story are usually the parts in a military story that are true. And it's the more conventional stuff that ends up getting, like we talked about with Kingdom of Heaven, which we'll get to in a future war stories. The most amazing parts that you would think is Hollywood are the parts that aren't.
Yeah.
And then the parts that you would think would be easily factual are the parts Hollywood kind of dolled up.
So that stoppage thing, that was real. That really did happen. All the guys actually had radios.
Mm-hmm.
Each individual person had a radio.
Yep.
But there's some scenes where they're communicating by yelling at each other in hand signals, after the shooting start. And I was like, well, I think that's more of a movie thing to kind of, because they were relaying how many people. Because
I don't care how loud you can project your voice, and you learn how to project your voice in the military, from the diorama. When you're wearing a gas mask,
it's just hard. Yeah.
That's what you can hear from outside.
And I didn't know what type of radios they had. You had back then, if it had the mic that was, because there's a speaker on the outside of gas mask where you can put a little fake speaker on the outside, but that wouldn't be used. But I figured you'd have the microphone probably inside. But yeah, it's going to be muffled. One of the other things is, when I was doing this and we were doing MOP 4 exercise, where we're all in our full chem gear, and I'm in charge of this group of people, and I turn around, I'm like, hey, Johnson, where are you at? And you hear, and you're like, you all look alike. I need you to move a hand or something. Mm-hmm. I imagine how did the main guys of the SAS be able to know who's with them, other than I know that so-and-so is in this position, and so I know that that's who should be there. Am I assuming correctly? Or were there any kind of identifying marks on their uniform?
So I believe they had like a small colored patch on one shoulder. But a lot of it just comes down to all of the... we do a thing in the Special Forces called rehearsals. You rehearse and you rehearse and you rehearse and you rehearse. There was there's a few brief moments in this that I really enjoy, where you see the guys like doing a double pat on the next guy's shoulder.
Yep.
You even know which shoulder you're going to tap him on. It's like, hey, I'm in position right behind you. Boom, open the door. You're not actually looking back to see they're there. You're waiting for the pat on the shoulder and that kind of thing. So,
yeah.
And then KBA says the purpose of a pistol is to acquire a rifle.
Yes,
true.
That is how it is in my house. I just want to say the audience participation in these is great. I really like it to where we got certain things I've researched, and then they'll come out of left field, pull some tidbits of information that's really cool. I like how all of this kind of fits together. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Good job, audience.
If we can't get there, the audience will
get us there.
Yeah.
We should do a silent one where we don't say anything. And we'll just watch and see if it happens.
Oh,
G.I. Joe episode.
That's a great idea. What we should do one where we're silent, but for the clips we show and then what the comments say. So then all we ever say the whole episode is the comments
of the clips.
Comment on the movie.
Keith Knight will stitch me up.
That'd be cool. Okay. And here is the final bit of the battle, which is my last clip for this episode, and then we'll talk out the rest of the film.
4 female hostages! 4 female hostages!
You're all right, Trevor. You're all right. Get down! Get down! Get down! Stay down! Don't move! Don't move! Very, 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 very!
The pen's in!
Whether it really happened that way or not, I do like that sleight of hand with the writing of it, where we see him studying the board, studying the faces, explaining that he's trying to figure out who's not supposed to get shot and who is. And they have that discussion about this guy right here. I can tell he's going to fight his way out of a corner no matter what. He's going to take no prisoners. And so, of course, in reality, one of the terrorists did try to sneak out with the hostages.
Two of them tried.
Yeah, two different things going on. But yes, that sort of happened.
Right.
From what I gathered, the guy above on the stairs recognized who that person was and pushed them all the way down to the bottom of the stairs. And 2 SAS guys caught him and shot him. And when they said it was all said and done, they fired 3 full magazines into this guy. So everybody shot at this person. Right. I don't know if they knew he had a grenade, or if that was kind of a movie thing at the end. But I know that they pushed him down the stairs, he hit the ground, and 3 magazines pulled into him.
Yeah, I love the fact that in the real story that you just related, it's almost like the real Murder on the Orient Express, where when everybody comes in, they're like, "Who killed this guy?" And they're like, "We all did." But I also love the writing payoff there, where we know that Rusty has studied this guy's face, and that is going to be Faisal's downfall. Where it's like, I think I'm going to be clever. I think I'm going to get out, and it's like, no. Rusty studied your face. He knows who you are. You're done. And I was both when I say shocked, I mean, I've seen a lot of violent films. I was just more like, oh, he's doing it right here on the stairs right now. Like, he didn't waste any time.
What MasterSun's saying there, he was down at the last landing he got pushed down the stairs. He was at the last landing, just a few steps away from where the terrorists had actually executed one of the hostages. One thing I'll say, and again, this is done because it looks cool, a bit like that kid up scene earlier.
Right.
None of these guys would be using automatic fire. That's just never ever done.
Right.
In the SAS. So this guy had 3 magazines worth of accurate bullet holes in him.
Right.
How many rounds does an MP5 hold? Around 30, I want to say. I don't know exactly.
Yeah.
So he got shot about 90 times.
Yeah.
Not with now. It would have been very, very rapid fire, but it wouldn't have been automatic fire.
Right. Right.
One of my pet peeves on movies is at the very beginning of your clip. Nobody ever has their shotgun loaded and ready to go. everybody has to cock the shotgun and then shoot.
Right.
And I'm like, so many instances, I'm like, that's a whole extra round you could have had in there if you were already ready to go. But every movie they do the same. They got to have that noise. You got to have that. Is just the cinematic noise of it is the shotgun cocking back.
Right. Yeah. And Tim Ward says, shot about 90 times.
Can you just bring up Jason Anderson's comment? This is quite interesting. He says, do they download MP5 mags to lessen the spring problems like they used to do with M16s? I've used a lot of different small arms in the Special Forces. Doesn't matter the manufacturer, the type, anything like that. Any 30-round magazine, we only put 28 rounds in it to lessen the compression on the spring. It helps you conserve ammunition. So yeah, and 100%. And it's not that they used to do it; they still do that today.
Do it. Yep.
That is standard in the SAS to put 2 rounds less than its full capacity. It also makes it a lot easier when you're loading. If you've got a magazine that is fully loaded, it can sometimes be hard to seat. So when you're trying to do what we call a rapid magazine change, you want a bit of give in that spring to make it easier for the magazine to seat.
Yeah.
You'll have less stoppage issues.
Is that 2-bullet removal? Is that only for assault rifles, or do you do that with sidearms as well?
With sidearms, it's probably 1 round because of the smaller capacity. But yeah, do that with sidearms too. You just want to take a little bit of that spring tension off. It helps with seating the magazine correctly in its housing. Yeah.
Okay. Good deal. This is why War Stories is a special show, everyone. We give you history. We give you military insight. We give you some humor. Mileage may vary. Occasional clips here and there.
Hey, one of the things that they didn't really show is about the one hostage the one terrorist that they actually captured. It looked like they were alluding to it, but they didn't do it. So at the end, where they were binding everybody because you're trying to lock everybody down because you don't know who's who. Actually, the BBC, one of the sound guys, was pointing that guy is a terrorist. So they wound up grabbing that person, and then that's the one where I read 2 different things. One of them actually said it, that they talked about. They were thinking the SAA guy was going to kill the guy. He was going to take him out back and shoot him. And then the guy was like, the cameras are rolling, right?
Right.
So they actually took him. He went to jail for like 20 years.
28 years.
Yeah, he got paroled in 2008. And incidentally, I find this this is really odd to me. He couldn't go back. They couldn't deport him because if they were going to deport him, he would be killed on sight. So he actually got a new identity, and he apparently still lives in the area. Which I find, I don't know how I feel about that. I'm like happy and upset at the same time.
Right.
And I know that they said I forgot the name of the police officer was writing against his parole, like, don't let this dude out. But they let him out. And I mean, they said he wasn't a threat anymore. I mean, I'm guessing if they let him out in 2008, say he was in his 20s, what kind of age is he? He's probably 70s or something. So but I find that kind of ironic that he stayed because he couldn't go back.
Wow.
So that the 6th and final terrorist that did manage to sneak his way out with the hostages. Obviously, 2 of them attempted. One of them was shot on the stairs. When they identified who he was outside, the SAS guys stood him up and they were walking him back into the embassy because Margaret Thatcher had said, take no prisoners. And they were going to shoot him inside the embassy. And one of the commanders on the ground said, nah, there's TV cameras everywhere. If we take him back in and he doesn't come out, we can't do that. So, that's kind of what happened there.
I almost made a really bad comment. Let me not say that on live.
Tell me after.
Yeah, I will definitely tell you after you just remind me.
So Darth Wizzy Wizard says, R.I.P. John McAleese. So John McAleese, he was the SAS trooper who is the famous one in the footage at the front of the building who jumped across the balcony to lay the charge, went in through the front of the building. In this film, he is the guy you often see next to Rusty, the tall guy with the handlebar mustache and the Scottish accent. He is an absolute legend of the SAS. He passed away a few years ago. His son was in the parachute regiment. His son also, rest in peace, he was killed in Afghanistan, Iraq or Afghanistan. His son was killed, and then John passed away not too long later. Some people say he died of grief. But interestingly, John McAleese is the basis for, I never remember the guy's name, the SAS character in Call of Duty who wears the boonie hat with the handlebar mustache. What's his name in the...
I couldn't tell you, but I know the face.
It's not Soap. It's the other guy. You're Soap.
Soap's the character that
the
gamer plays.
Yeah. I can't remember his name.
Yeah, but he was the basis for John McAleese. Yep. That's where the big handlebar mustache comes from. Captain Price. There we go. Captain Price. John McAleese was based on that character.
So, and you also got to note that Tom Clancy, when he was doing his series, when he did Rainbow Six, he based a lot of that stuff off of this particular mission about the guys in black. It was a reference to that. They actually had in Rainbow Six, they had a siege of a building, and it was kind of like this. And then you mentioned Price in the game, and I'm curious. Now I got to look it up because I know in Rainbow Six they had a guy named Price, and I think he was SAS guy. Now I'm gonna look it up, but I can't remember.
Captain Price. He's been a long-running character in that game series. And George Aitken says here he thought handlebar moustaches were pretty common in the UK military in the 80s. No, British military regulation is a moustache cannot go past the corners of your mouth.
Right.
One of the reasons, first of all, the SAS are not bound by, uniform codes and things like that. We very rarely wear berets, don't salute officers. You don't even call officers sir, not out of disrespect. It's a classless society. So the handlebar moustaches made them look non-military, but as opposed to beards would actually affect the seal of the gas mask, whereas you could get away with a handlebar moustache. Obviously, when you're out on operations in the Middle East, I wore a beard for years in Iraq. Beards were the thing because we didn't need to wear gas masks in Iraq. Not when I was there, anyway.
Keith Knight says, yes, Tony is spot on there. A hostage was voicing her disapproval at the 6th terrorist being taken away.
Yeah, yep. Eddie Price is the name of the Rainbow Six guy. And when they show a depiction of him, he has a handlebar mustache. And he is the British SAS person. So I'm assuming there's a lot of similarities probably put in for that.
Alejandro, I would highly recommend that you watch a channel called Analog Toys, where they do an amazing rundown of the Action Man SAS and Action Force SAS team history. Can't recommend it enough. Great video, highly informative. I think that
put the closed captions on because you don't want to hear that guy's voice. It's kind of annoying. So save your ears.
Alejandro, I've seen you ask this question a couple of times in the chat. I mentioned the Action Man SAS toys right at the start. So, you obviously joined late.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I do on this channel, like for content. People come on this channel, no matter what the video is, and they're like, well, Michael, you need to say something about toys in this video somewhere. And I'm like, I do? Because that's not what it's about.
Yeah.
But they always insist. You got
to. But we did twice. We did twice.
Right.
The Action Man and Cobra.
That's right. That's true. I did a Cobra Commander impression.
You did a whole Cobra Commander voice.
Yeah. And if it had been a Navy film, I'd have done a shipwreck impression. But as I like to call him, shitwreck. Yeah. So we are at the end of this film. I do have right here the last little bit I have is I have this the end card that I wanted to show. This is the end card that played that talked about the actual history. And the bit here that I wanted to bring this up for was the whole mention of they now lie in unmarked graves in East London, which I don't mean to sound cliche, but like what a mic drop that is. Like, you know, you had this misguided goal. You really didn't do the maths on that one, and now you're in unmarked graves.
That's a way to sum up Margaret Thatcher. Well, you probably can't sum her up completely like that, you know. She did do a lot of damage to, you know, British industry and mining and things like that. But certainly from a military perspective, I know guys. I certainly, you know, and I was in the SAS in the 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
You would walk into some guys' barracks rooms, and on the wall they would have a framed photograph of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II and a framed photo of Margaret Thatcher. And a lot of that because of the way she handled not only the Iranian embassy, but the Falklands War as well.
Right. And I guess that meant that they, when it came to the embassy thing, they must have approved of the way that she handled it, right?
Oh, absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. And this really gave the entire Western world a morale boost because throughout the 70s, terrorism was becoming more and more prevalent.
Yep.
And in, you know, in a lot of cases, the terrorists, their demands were being met, and it's like, gee, this is going to get worse and worse and worse. And then after the Iranian Embassy Siege, it's like, damn, we ain't going to do that again.
Right. It reminds me of from what I understand, you know, like with the what was it? I can't remember what year the incident was. I think it was in the 70s. I want to say it was in the 70s where the airliner, the Israeli airliner, was hijacked, and they were like, "We have all these demands," and they were like, "No," and they're like, "We have hostages," and they're like, "We don't care."
Yeah,
we're giving you anything. Which I like. I like the way that the British and Thatcher specifically and the SAS played this one, which is, we care about the hostages, but we're going to do everything in our power militarily to make sure that they're safe. And we really don't care what happens to you guys. It's almost like it's finding that middle ground between, we don't care about the hostages either, and we're going to negotiate to save everybody. Like there's this nice middle ground there, which I think is cool. Thank you, Robert Diaz. It's very kind of you to say that.
Thanks.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite series to do on the channel, and I ain't ashamed of saying that. I like this series better than Star Wars Follies. That's right, I said it.
I don't know about that. I like Star Wars Follies.
I like Star Wars
Follies.
I like
more.
You like Star Wars Follies more after doing this series?
I need you to do more of them.
Well, they take a while.
That's not my problem.
I know it's not. I know. You're treating me like a hijacked Israeli airliner. I get it. And then KBA says, Michael, you really need to talk about toys during this Schindler's List video. I mean, it's like, yeah, I ain't doing that. But I love you and I reach, KBA. We reach. Yeah.
I'll admit to a brief moment last night. In fact, even going back to last week's episode where we did Beau Jest, I was like, I've got this, and I think I might have mentioned the Action Man French Foreign Legion figure on the show, but I was like, I was going to have it here on the table. And then yesterday when I was thinking about the setup for this, I was like, have all the SAS figures. And now I'm like, that's not what War Stories is about. It's about the film that we're discussing.
Yep.
Yeah. So So all the SAS figures are still in the cabinet. Save me having to get them all out.
Yep. And there is a wonderful video about the entire SAS figure range. Analog Toys. He's a friend of War Stories. He's a
Close
friend
the captions. No sound.
My understanding is that Analog Toys is run by a gentleman named Desert Rat. He's really, really into all the toy. You should really check it out. I mean, it's a really great series.
Clemens, you know, the format of my toy video is very similar to Michael's. You know, have the toys on the table there, and I try, you know, every now and again I'll appear on screen so that people know who the host is and all of that kind of thing. I try and keep it to no more than 10% of the video and have 90% of the video be about the toys. But that other 10% where I'm on camera looking into the lens, I've been doing that for 6.5 years just to annoy you. Before I even knew who you were, I started doing that to annoy you.
I feel it. It's in my soul. I'm like, what is he doing?
Thank you, Ted. He says, I enjoy the variety of shows RetroBlasting offers. TJC says, always informative, humor, military procedures, weapons. Awesome. Always enjoy these streams. Nothing but respect for Tony and MasterSun42 for their service and Michael for his attention to detail.
Thank you.
My talents are remembering useless BS and not giving up. Those are my talents.
Evidenced by the fact that Michael referenced Faisal as being Alec Guinness's character in Lawrence of Arabia.
Who else would know that but Michael?
Lawrence,
maybe Alec Guinness.
Maybe Lawrence of Arabia. Probably the only person that it's ever been in history that was awesome, whose name was also Lawrence. And even the Arabs were like, "Can we change your name? Because it's just not good." It's a joke.
Yeah.
Joke. Lighten up.
If there's anyone here called Lawrence, I apologize for what I'm about to say, but every Lawrence I've ever known was just like the Lawrence in Full Metal Jacket.
Don't blame them. Blame your parents.
Oh. Keith Knight says, I love this series of shows. Keep them coming. And we will. And Whitey says, I love it when Michael flips out on people. I do.
George got us.
What did he say? Now, I have a caveat to that. There are actors named Lawrence that play badasses. But are they in the real world badasses? I'm not saying they're not cool on screen. And I'm not saying they're not good people. I'm simply saying that, you know.
That's your homework, chat. Find us badass Lawrences.
There aren't too many actors that are actually badasses in real life.
That's what I'm saying. That's kind of what I'm saying.
Exceptions. There are exceptions to the rule, like a personal favorite actor of mine, Lee Marvin. But yeah.
Nope.
You know,
doesn't count. He was
because
he was a badass before he was an actor.
Oh, that MasterSun makes a good point, Tony. He was a Marine in World War II. Before he was an actor.
They have to be a badass. They have to be an actor and then become a badass. Not.
Yeah, that.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's hard.
So what would Jackie Chan be? Because he trained as a martial artist first. And then use his acting to do all of these amazing things. Is he the closest we can come to a badass actor?
Well, there are actors.
Bruce Lee.
Bruce Lee was a badass first.
True. Yeah. Maybe Jackie Chan also was a badass first because
there were some actors who played like certain roles and then they become interested afterwards, and then they become a badass.
Right.
I can't think of none right now, but I know there was some in like some martial arts movies off the top of my head. I wonder if Keanu Reeves is a badass with guns because he did real training for the movie. I don't know.
See, Alan saves the whole thing again. He's like, that wasn't his first name, so technically he dodges that bullet. It's like, well, that's fair. That's fair. Robert, really?
He was a badass first, though.
That's
he was
true.
Before he was in the movies.
Yeah, it's true.
I'll add a little caveat to that Chuck Norris thing real quick.
Yeah.
Is Chuck Norris really an actor?
Chuck Norris to me is an accomplished martial artist who happens to be able to stand in front of a camera. Kind of like, and I say this with all respect because she's one of my favorites, but it's kind of like Cynthia Rothrock.
Yeah,
she's an amazing martial artist first, an actor second.
Yep.
Yeah. James Salzberg, thank you for the super chat of the evening. He says, any chance of a review of Generation Kill from HBO, since both MasterSun and Analog have experiences in that war? It's all open. It's all open. It's a matter of getting to it for sure. Yeah.
Have you seen that?
I've never seen it.
No.
I don't even know what that is about. I'm assuming Afghanistan and Iraq.
So Generation Kill is much like Band of Brothers. It's a 10-part miniseries by HBO. It's really good, and it is about Marine Force Recon, like the first Marine unit to reach Baghdad on the initial invasion of Iraq in 2003. It's a really good show, but much like what me and Michael did with Band of Brothers, it would have to be done probably over 3 episodes where we cover 3 episodes per war stories. I highly recommend it, gentlemen. If you can get yourself a copy of that on DVD or Blu-ray.
Yeah. I also came into possession of a film recently called The Ambush. I don't know if you guys have heard of this. It is a true story from, of all places, the United Arab Emirates during a military conflict. It's a true story, and it's like 3 guys who get surrounded in a wadi, and they have to hold out. And I haven't watched it yet, but I'm really excited to. And it's a movie I believe that was made over in the United Arab Emirates. It's a recent film too. It looks pretty cool. So I want to put that one on the docket at some point. But I promised a certain person that at the end of this episode, I would remind all of us that there is a gentleman named Conrad who really would like to join us to talk about 1917.
Done.
What do you think, MasterSun? I see mischief in your eyes.
So I'm going to be pushed to the background because once Conrad starts talking and that sultry voice comes out,
we all are.
And it doesn't matter what he says, you're going to go like, that's the most educated thing I have ever heard. I'm all about it. I think he's great. But I think that's going to be an interesting.
That you won't be the most handsome man on screen anymore.
I'm gonna have to talk like this and give you my Barry White or something to keep.
I would be honored to sit down and discuss 1917 with his pre-produced video about 1917. I cannot recommend enough. I think I've watched that thing a dozen times. It's almost better than 1917 is Conrad's video about 1917.
Yeah. You can't say no to Conrad. I'd give him my car if he asked and later wonder why. James Salzberg says, yes, 1917 with Conrad. Okay, well, here's what we'll do. I will reach out to Conrad and see if 2 Fridays from now is even doable for him, given his time zone. And if not, we'll have to work out maybe like a special time and episode for 1917 with him sooner rather than later. So and
considering that, like I am flexible on my kind of time zone as well. I would happily. I mean, I was up at 4:30 today anyway, so I could have done this stream 2 hours before it actually started. So,
Keith, I'm gonna throw you a bone here. Just because we've talked about Zulu, we didn't talk about Zulu with MasterSun. So,
There's also Zulu Dawn.
There's See, I love this crew. We're always thinking. So the point is that there is the next time we talk about Zulu, we will extend the invite to you to be a part of that episode. You have my word. All right, everybody. So what are our closing thoughts on 6 days?
Well, real quick, people are asking, so I'm just dropping a link to Conrad's channel in the chat.
Yep.
Movie Oubliette.
Mm-hmm.
Closing thoughts. There are a number of inaccuracies. Things are streamlined. I know. I did watch a couple of interviews with some of the real life SAS guys who were very very hard on the film. I thought, obviously, I understand they're very very close to the subject matter personally, but I really do feel as though the production company did a very good job with the resources and particularly finances that they had. Had they have had, a bit more money, this potentially would have been a 2-hour film instead of a 90-minute film on a grander scale.
Right.
But I think for what it was, it's a very important piece of modern British not military, just British history. So I'm glad it was made. I'll say that it's not perfect. It's not a cinematic masterpiece, but I enjoyed it, and I'm glad. that because there's a lot of people in our generation who don't read books and don't research stuff, and if they think that the siege of the Iranian embassy was kind of like what happened in the Lewis Collins film Who Dares Wins, I'm glad that this didn't completely set the record straight, but got us 80% of the way further ahead than what that film did.
Yeah, I agree. What about you, MasterSun?
So I think if this film would have been made by Hollywood, it would have looked better. It would have been better effects. However, we would have screwed up the story. I thought that they took the parts and they were more true to the story than what we would have done.
Right.
Because we would have wanted to make this flash. We would have had all these alternate things. The reporter would have been having a love affair with her cameraman or the person inside. We would have done that type of stuff to kind of muck up the waters. And it would have looked good, but it would have been a whole lot harder for you to see truth from fiction. And I'm starting, the more I see of like British films and British things, they get a little closer to reality, regardless of how good looking it looks, than what we would do. This film was really good. When it was, once I started watching it, I was kind of like, all right, let me see this British made film about the SAS. I figured it's going to put them in good light. I figured that. But I figured it was going to be, kind of some bland parts. Like Bravo 20 had some bland parts. No, I'm only comparing. I'm not saying it's crappy. I'm only comparing because that's the film that I've seen before. And then when I see this, I'm like, this is good. 5-10 minutes into it, you had me. I was upset that I had to pause the video because my daughter kept talking to me and pulling out something. And and it's one of those films like, okay, now I got to back it like 10 minutes because it has to do it justice by going back. So it was really good. And I hate to say, thank you, Tony, for recommending that one. It hurts me, but it was, I thought it was very, very good. And when I was reading and doing the research and seeing how they put those little bits in it and all those kind of factual things, I thought they did a really good job.
I agree with both sentiments. I am the type of person that likes it when I see a little bit more restraint because of where Hollywood has gone with its stuff now. It's like, oh, Lord. I like the fact that they were keeping it within the boundaries of the event. They weren't trying to go crazy with all types of other stuff. And I liked the by the numbers quality of it. They had just enough story threads in there to pay things off, and otherwise they were giving me a relatively decent education, and that's kind of the way I feel about movies like The Longest Day and Battle of Britain, where they're kind of like a by the numbers kind of thing, showing you the days and times of things going down, even if everything inside of it to get you there is a little bit more compressed, like in The Great Escape or something. So I had a lot of this production that I really appreciated, and I'm so glad that I know the film exists. Sorry, go ahead.
No, as an example to what you're saying there, Michael, this film opens with like a quick cut of news footage from the time. You know, there's some mention of Margaret Thatcher, and it's a very, very quick cut, like while the credits are rolling, and then boom, the terrorists are walking down the street about to go into the building. If this had been made by a Hollywood production studio, there would have been a scene with the Chief Superintendent Max Vernon and his wife maybe having breakfast before he left home, and
100%.
something there. There would have been a scene with the BBC reporter, you know, so you can feel connected to this character who now finds himself trapped in the embassy. There would have been all of that when the tension that gets ratcheted up in this, when we understand the stakes without having to know what, you know, the BBC reporter had for breakfast with his wife that morning. But that's what Hollywood would have done with it.
Yeah. I had this thought as the movie ended. I love the fact that Dunkirk and Darkest Hour came out within like 8 months of one another, because they show you both sides of the same event from the perspective of the Allies, right? So they show you the actual battle in a way, and then they also show you all of the tension going on behind the scenes as Winston Churchill is trying to get a government together that will be able to function to handle Dunkirk, right? The tension is really high. When I got done with this movie, I almost wished that there was an unofficial companion film called Prince's Row, whatever the name of this, Prince's
Gate.
Prince's Gate. That's the title I wanted, and that it was just all about it was this version of Darkest Hour, where it was just Margaret Thatcher dealing with this situation with her ministers behind the scenes over the 6 days. Like, I wanted to see that.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mentioned earlier, I was like, I really think this film would have benefited from having a good actress portray Thatcher and have Thatcher appear in the film, because she's so closely linked to this.
Sure.
I think a final comment I'd like to make is it's a dumb title for a movie. That's probably why it didn't get spread far and wide, why you guys hadn't heard of it. Like, why they didn't call this film Operation Nimrod, because that's a pretty cool name. Prince's Gate is a great name for it. It could have been called Stand By, Go, Go, Go. But 6 Days, I thought was a weak title.
I'm thinking zombie movie.
Yeah.
6 days. That is the...
I think that weak title really hindered the reach that this film achieved, because I feel it should have reached a much broader audience. So I'm glad I was able to at least bring it to the RetroBlasting audience tonight, and to you two fine gentlemen. One fine gentleman, and
well, just let's be compassionate, Tony. He was fine before he was frozen for like 80 years. So,
I mean, he said earlier in the show he can't believe that he's older than me. I was like, dude, I wasn't drafted into Vietnam like you.
I've told everybody, they don't believe me. I've told everybody he is the Captain America super soldier based on when you find out how old he is versus how he looks. And it's like, yeah, you only get to look like that by being frozen. So wherever your super soldier serum is and your shield and everything, I know you're holding out on me, but
it's totally only on the outside. On the inside, 75. For sure.
And with that, everybody, we will see you on the next War Stories, which will be in two Fridays from now. And in the background, we will announce if and when that will be 1917 with Conrad, or if that will be a special engagement. So until then, thank you, Tony and MasterSun, for joining me as always on this this episode. And we will see you on the next one, everyone. Talk to you later.
Yep.